And when I came up on the car, I hit the brakes really hard.
When I felt it lean a little bit, I kind of looked through the rearview mirror, and I can actually see the trailer leaning.
Rolling that truck over was not even part of my mindset at that point.
I lost control of the vehicle, and it started to roll.
Because rolling over meant possible death, burning up.
I just kind of got scared and didn't want to look at it anymore. I wanted to concentrate on everything around me.
All my focus went into what was in front of me, what was to the left, to the right, ahead of me.
So it flipped over onto the side and then over to the top and then back over 4 times all the way back to the wheels.
It was all about how am I going to get out of this alive?
It was very scary. It was very scary.
It could have been my family in that car, or anybody's family.
So, what causes a rollover?
The answer you get most often is driving too fast for road and weather conditions. And that's true, sometimes, but that's not the only reason. We want to go beyond that general answer to look at all the different factors that contribute to rollovers. By the time we're finished, you'll know how they happen, why they happen, and how you can avoid them.
Rollovers can happen anywhere. You probably think most tank truck rollovers happen at exit and entrance ramps. The driver misjudges the curve and takes it too fast. But no, rollovers actually happen more often on straight roadways. Why do you think that is? It's probably because you're more focused on the road when you approach that exit or entrance ramp. Not so much on the straight roads. So our job here is to help you maintain that focus on all roadways. To do that, we'll look at several issues that affect the potential for a rollover. They include vehicle design and performance, load effects, highway factors, and driver factors. Let's start with the design and performance of cargo tank trailers.
The first thing you need to know is the impact of a high center of gravity. Everything has a center of gravity. It's the place where an object is balanced in all directions.
Anything with a high center of gravity relative to its width is less stable. And cargo tank units have a high center of gravity. That means the unit will lean when it enters a turn. How much it leans depends on the vehicle's speed, the sharpness and banking of the turn, and the unit's center of gravity. So the truck starts to lean, and what happens? Its center of gravity shifts towards the outside of the curve. When it does that, the liquid in the tank moves sideways. We call that sloshing. If this happens too suddenly and too strongly, it can roll the vehicle. If you hit the brakes suddenly, the liquid will surge forward. That can also cause you problems.
What's the key word here? Suddenly. If you do things more slowly, you reduce the risk of problems.
Anytime you speed up, you're subject to mess up.
As I was going down the hill, I kind of felt the trailer tilting a little bit because of the speed that I was going.
And you come around the curve, and it's sharper than you anticipate, and you just won't be able to slow down, and you can roll over the truck.
It made me very alert of all of my surroundings and looking ahead instead of, being too comfortable. You can never be too comfortable.
All drivers should understand the design and performance of their vehicles. But as a cargo tank driver, you also have to understand how your liquid payload can and will contribute to rollovers. So let's talk about load effects. Drivers who've rolled over will often tell you their load shifted. They'll say the load shift caused the rollover. But the load, especially a fluid load, will always shift. It's responding to the way you, as the driver, are handling the trailer's movements. How much load you're carrying affects how your vehicle handles. With a tank full of liquid, one wrong move can mean a rollover. The most important thing you can do to keep the vehicle and the load under control is manage your speed. Manage your speed to adapt to driving conditions. When the road and the weather call for it, slow down.
As difficult as it can be to drive a full tank of liquid, partial loads are even more challenging because there's more room for the liquid to move. Over 94% of rollovers occur in trucks with a partial load.
Liquid slosh and surge are a big factor in those rollovers. Slosh and surge are caused by speed, by turning radius, by sudden braking or taking off, by sudden maneuvers, and by load distribution.
You have to pay particular attention anytime you're hauling liquid as to how much you're hauling, how high it is, what the level is in your tank.
If you hit the brakes suddenly, that product is going to move forward. And when it does, and it hits that bulkhead at the end of the trailer, all that weight now is thrown forward at you. It just makes it harder to stop.
Surges also occur in a tanker following a sudden maneuver. This could be something like sudden braking to avoid an obstacle, trying to get back on the road after you drift off the pavement, moving the tractor too quickly for conditions, or shifting or missing a shift on a turn.
And if you're not careful and you just kind of release your foot off the brake for a moment, at that wrong moment, you could be thrown into an intersection. And you don't want that.
We should also take a look at several vehicle maintenance issues.
Things like poor brake performance, a damaged suspension, underinflated tires, and load dynamics. They could all contribute to a rollover. You could eliminate some of them with an adequate pre-trip inspection. If you have any questions about your vehicle, tell someone in maintenance or at dispatch. Don't leave with a vehicle that you aren't confident will perform safely.
I mean, it takes just a few extra minutes to check all these things, and it could be your life if you don't.
Now let's look at potential highway factors. These include sharp curves, steep downhill grades, soft shoulders, berms, mounds, and curbs, narrow driveway entrances or exits, and limited visibility areas that can reduce eye lead time for turns or hills. It's important to survey and identify high-risk sections of regularly traveled routes. If at all possible, survey routes to unfamiliar destinations in advance to identify and avoid high-risk areas, and proceed cautiously until you know and are comfortable with the route. Remember, you're the professional on the roads you travel. If there's a road design condition that makes you feel uneasy, report it to your company. Changes in dispatch or additional warning signs at locations like that could help prevent rollovers.
You see this sign? This information is not for you. It's for passenger cars traveling in good weather. Fleet safety experts say that when you enter this curve, you should drop your speed at least 10 miles per hour below what you see here.
We all know that long downhill grades can lead to excessive speed. So, are your brakes properly adjusted? Have you shifted to a lower gear? The only acceptable time to deal with downhill grades is before you start down them. Don't rely on the feel to estimate your speed. Remember that the larger the vehicle, the slower the driver thinks it's moving. So always check your speedometer before you enter curves, ramps, or downhill grades. And remember, newer trucks don't have the same engine retarding as older models. Be sure to set your jake brake properly. Be aware of the shoulder conditions on any roadway. Dropping off onto a soft shoulder may cause the outside wheels to sink and trip the whole unit on its side.
Tripping in a little closer.
They'll hit the curb and trip the unit. A good rule of thumb is to allow about 3 to 4 feet of clearance between the tractor's tires and the curb. That way, the trailer tire should be clear of the curb, even if off-tracking occurs. An improper recovery can lead to a reverse tripping condition. Let's say you go off the roadway and you try to bring the tractor back onto the roadway too quickly and at too fast a speed. This could trip the unit when the tires hit the shoulder berm or the pavement on the return. Wide intersections may cause you to be too confident when you're turning. Always gear down and slow down before the turn. Generally, you're taught to square the turn at slow speeds to reduce the impact of off-tracking. But loads with a high center of gravity have to be driven differently through intersection turns. You should round the turn to make sure the trailer doesn't have a sudden change in direction.
Cutting short on a turn is one of the most common errors.
Be aware of soft berms and narrow culverts. Wet weather may soften berms, and narrow culverts may allow the rear tandem to slip off the driveway into the ditch, and that could overturn the unit. When traffic conditions allow for it, making a left turn into a driveway is safer than making a right. It gives the rear tandem more room to track the tractor's path.
Okay, we've talked about vehicle design, load effects, and highway factors. Now we come to the last area, in many ways the most important. It's you, the driver. You're the one that controls your unit. Before you leave the yard, make sure you know it like the back of your hand.
Begin by conducting a thorough pre-trip inspection. Learn as much as you can from dispatch and from other drivers about road and weather conditions. Remember, a safe journey depends on your actions, so avoid unsafe behaviors. Encourage others to avoid them too. And by unsafe behaviors, we're talking about things like speeding, whether that's going beyond the posted speed or just too fast for the road and conditions. Distractions like talking on your cell phone, or worse, texting. Complacency, fatigue, and driving under the influence. About physical and mental conditions like diabetes or divorce. Even something as simple as eating or daydreaming. Driving too fast for the vehicle and road conditions is a factor in most rollovers. Remember that speed limits are set for small vehicles driving in good weather during the daytime. Adjust your speed accordingly for the type of unit you're driving, especially at night and during bad weather.
Tailgating, road rage, and failure to plan in advance can lead to sudden, radical lane changes. And that can cause your unit to roll over.
One of the most dangerous driver behaviors is complacency.
In the 23 years that I've driven a tank truck, I always keep in my mind that I'm hauling hazardous material, and it's very dangerous.
Well, a driver should never get too comfortable being behind the wheel, especially the wheel of a big rig.
When you get so comfortable and think that you've been driving so long and you have so much experience that you just, it all becomes natural to you, you're gonna mess up because something is gonna get you that you're not expecting.
It only takes a second. Adjusting the radio, answering a cell phone, reaching for a drink.
That little bit of inattention is enough to slide off the side of the road or miss the beginning of a curve, or possibly enough to cause a rollover.
Driver fatigue is another factor. Maybe you didn't get enough rest during your time off. Maybe you're working too many hours, or you're having trouble adjusting to rotating shifts. There are many warning signs of fatigue while driving. You may have trouble focusing. You may have frequent yawning, blinking, or heavy eyelids and head bobbing. You may have trouble remembering the last few miles. Or you may miss an exit or traffic sign.
You may even find yourself drifting from your lane, tailgating, or hitting the shoulder rumble strip.
If you show any of these warning signs, get off the road, get out of the cab, and move around to get the blood circulating again. If you're too tired to keep driving safely, find a safe, well-lit area to park and rest a few minutes. Caffeine, energy pills, loud radios, opening the windows, and other tricks to stay awake don't work.
Don't try them. Instead, follow the hours of service regulations and get plenty of rest during your off hours.
Obviously, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol is not permitted, but it could be a major factor in a rollover. Even over-the-counter drugs can impair your driving. Read and follow all precautions anytime you're using medication. Well, there you have it. Rollovers happen too often in the cargo tank industry. They can be severe, and they can mean the release of hazardous materials. And they can happen because of the design and performance of the trucks, because of the characteristics of the roadway, and because of the actions and behavior of the driver. In most rollovers, speed too fast for the conditions is a major contributor, and it's one that's entirely under your control.
We hope that you now have a better understanding of the factors that can lead to a rollover. And we hope that you're better prepared as you head out on the road. The bottom line is simple. Rollover crashes are preventable. Rollover crashes are unacceptable, and you are the key to eliminating them.
Is North America's leading producer of semi-trailers and liquid transportation systems, Wabash National Corporation's tank trailer portfolio includes some of the industry's most reputable brands, some of which have been in existence for over 100 years. With this type of experience, we're all too familiar with the effects of improper tank trailer loading and unloading. To demonstrate the impact of such an event, we orchestrated a controlled vacuum collapse or suck-in of a tank trailer. Keep in mind, most tank trailers are not capable of full vacuum, which is 14.7 psi of external pressure. Therefore, a processing error or an adverse condition may lead to a vacuum collapse and a total loss of the tank trailer. Some of the most common causes are 1. A closed manhole during unloading. 2. A vacuum relief vent rendered inoperable with congealed product. 3. Improper removal or plugging of a vacuum relief vent. 4. Significant temperature drops inside a closed tank immediately after cleaning. 5. Closed valves on the vapor return line during closed dome unloading. Of course, this list is not exhaustive or all-inclusive. For the demonstration, we used a 22-year-old Brenner tank with modified running and landing gear. The wrap and insulation were removed for better visibility. To create the vacuum, we connected the tank to a Progress truck-mounted vacuum tank. It's important to mention that the Brenner unit exceeded our expectations for external pressure performance. This 12-gauge stainless steel tank trailer withstood over 10.5 psi of external pressure, more than expected by calculation, with a reasonable factor of safety. This performance is a testament to the craftsmanship of our manufacturing associates. With this demonstration, we hope to provide you with a window into the dynamics of a vacuum collapse. We welcome you to utilize this video in employee and stakeholder training.
Jason, Dak, start the engine. The gauge that's on top of the tank trailer is a vacuum gauge. That's showing negative pressure inside the tank. Right about 9 minutes.
When it's all about the money in trucking, tanker work can be particularly lucrative. Now, some of you may be interested in getting into tanker work, but you really don't know very much about it. So let me tell you a few things. Basically, there are 4 types of tankers. They all do different types of work. There are fuel tankers that haul mostly gasoline and diesel, and they deliver to the gas stations. You've seen them, and they deliver to bulk plants. There are chemical tankers. Those are the smaller tanks, cylindrical to mostly they're stainless material on the outside. There are pneumatic tanks, which are the great big tanks that haul bulk dry product like cement or plastic pellets. And there are propane tanks, or propane bottles, as truck drivers call them, and they haul liquid propane. Interesting differences between the 4 types of tanks because they do 4 different types of work. The tankers that haul the gasoline and the diesel fuel, for instance, the liquid tankers, generally they have different compartments within the tanks, and they have baffles within the tanks, so they can haul a multitude of products. They can haul no-leaded and super and diesel all on the same truck, just in different compartments. They also have baffles within the tanks to help stop with the sloshing action of the liquids back and forth. And really, when you're driving one of those, they're pretty nice to handle. They maneuver well, they back up well. They're a nice set of trailers to pull, and a lot of them, you'll see them in a B-train configuration and in a lot of places now. And gas tankers and diesel tankers, that type of work, it's pretty good. I did that for about 5 years, and I quite enjoyed it. About the only downside was I found that even when I was wearing rubber gloves all the time, after a while my skin seemed to absorb the smell and the odor of diesel fuel and gas, and kind of got into your pores. There wasn't much you could do about that, but generally I enjoyed that kind of work. I tried to deliver more to big bulk plants rather than the gas stations. I found the gas stations annoying because the cars are always cutting in and out while you're trying to unload. And if you go to these big bulk plants, there's no interference. You just drive in, you plug in, you unload. So that's pretty nice work. Chemical tankers, I did that for a while too. Chemical tankers can be very tricky to drive because there are no compartments generally, and there are no baffles. And the reason they don't put baffles in these trailers, they're straight bore trailers. They're just like a tube inside, but they have no walls to stop the slosh. And the reason they do that is because they wash out after every load to make sure there's no cross-contamination between what they've hauled last and what they're loading next. And the problem is with baffles, there are seals on the inside of the trailer that can capture particles of these chemicals and cross-contaminate the products from the last product to the next product. And they're very, very difficult to wash, very, very expensive to wash. A lot of times guys are getting in there and scrubbing them with their hands. Not the drivers, mind you. They have specific tank washes for these trailers, but it costs hundreds of dollars to scrub these things clean between loads, but it's got to be done to avoid contamination of the product. Those trailers are very difficult to drive because the product sloshes back and forth all the time, and depending on the weight of the product, oftentimes you can't get a full load. That trailer is only half to 3/4 full. So there's an awful lot of slosh, even when you're changing gears or whether you're in traffic going through stoplights. You've got to learn to shift all over again because it's a different process. You have to learn to shift with the momentum, and that takes a while to get the hang of. Another problem with these chemical tankers, if the trailer's half loaded, 3/4 loaded, and you're running in the mountains in the wintertime, just when you need the traction and you're facing uphill, the weight of the load always runs to the back of the trailer, of course, as you're going uphill, and you break traction on your drives because all the weight is on the trailer tandem. So they can be a real treat to drive. One of the other problems with them is that there's everything is by appointment with them. Now, on the bright side, these chemical tankers, generally the drivers don't load or unload them. The loading and unloading process is done by the refineries rather than the driver. As compared to gas and diesel tankers, generally they're loaded by the drivers. So there's a difference there. Another big difference with these chemical tankers is it's almost always by appointment. So you'll have a scheduled time when they're expecting you at a rack to load or unload. Generally, they give you lots of time to get there. It's not rushed because you don't want to roll one of these things over. But everything works by appointment time. There's a lot of downtime between loads because you have to have the trailer washed out, and the wash racks don't always get to you immediately. So oftentimes you're sitting, I sat 5 days one time waiting for my chemical trailer to get washed out in Louisiana. There can be a fair bit of downtime, which is part of why hauling chemical tankers needs to pay more. And generally that industry, the chemical industry, does pay more because they realize that A, it's nasty, nasty stuff you're hauling. B, there's a fair bit of downtime. And they do. They pay you for your loading time, your unloading time, your layover time. All of that's paid. So on the downside, though, is that most chemical companies, including the one I worked for, found that as a weak spot. So they would always, that's where they would try to cheat you on your paychecks, and you really had to watch them because they'd gouge you at every point that they could think of. They'd shorten the miles, and I used to enjoy saying that that every year the one company that I worked for, the chemical company, when you were on the road, they paid by the mile. But every year the customers seemed to get closer to the terminal because every year the miles would shrink. The mileage from Toronto to Dallas or Houston would literally drop every year. And when you'd go in and question them about it, they'd say, oh, you know, the improvements in the highways or something like that. They'd come up with some story. But, you know, the interstates haven't been altered that much that they can chop 100 miles off the distance between Toronto and Dallas. So it's just a story. You really had to watch your paychecks hauling chemicals. Another different type of tanker are the pneumatic tankers, and they haul, as I say, dry bulk product like dry bulk cement or dry bulk plastic pellets. Generally, they unload through a pressurized system. A blower is what they call it. So they just plug in and blow their product into a tank. The gas and diesel tankers, they can gravity drop, which is just a matter of hooking up a hose and letting the stuff run into an underground tank. They can pump off, most of the trucks are equipped with pumps, and they can pump off their product at a bulk plant. That's how they unload, those two methods, gravity drop or pumping the product off. The chemical tankers, they can gravity drop, they can pump off the product, depending on what the product is, of course, and they can blow off, they can pressurize off, and depending on what product is on the trailers dictates oftentimes how they unload. Some of the more flammable products that they haul, they don't want to risk fire and explosion by running the product through a product pump. So generally, they'll pressurize those off, blow them off. Propane bottles also, pressurized unloading. Now, I didn't ever haul any dry bulk tanks in my career, but one thing I did notice about them was they always had a high center of gravity because the tanks and compartments were cone shaped to aid with the unloading process. So they were high at the top, narrow at the bottom like a funnel, which put all the weight, the product weight when you were loaded, put it all up to the top of the trailer, and those trailers would be 13.5 feet high. So the majority of the weight of the product was in the top half of the trailer, and that can create a handling problem. So you've got to be aware when your trailer's top heavy like that. Generally, tanker work pays better, not so much the pneumatic tanks, because there's nothing hazardous in those generally. But if you're hauling gas or diesel or chemicals or propane, you've got on a product that can potentially kill you and others if you make a mistake in the loading or unloading process, or if you roll the truck over on the interstate, there's a good chance that people are going to die. So they want the best drivers. They're willing to pay for the best drivers. It's not for every driving style. Generally, tanker guys are older guys, calm, slower moving guys. You cannot rush with a tanker because you can only make one mistake, and it could be your last mistake. So you don't want to make any mistakes. It's dangerous business. Make no mistake about it. Chemical guys are given a product book, so they can check the product book to find out what code, what hazmat code the product is, so they can act accordingly as to how to treat the product and how to unload the product, that type of thing. And there's 1,000 different chemicals with 1,000 different requirements and needs. So you've really got to be on top of your paperwork to haul chemicals. And the hazmat book will certainly help you when you're placarding your trailer. It can be a very complex thing, and there's no margin for error. As I say, you've got to be very careful. Often too, with chemical trailers, they're an insulated trailer. So underneath that stainless skin is a layer of insulation before it gets to the barrel. They can haul products that need to be kept warm for a certain distance, because if you're hauling wax, for instance, the stuff will freeze up and gel in bad weather after a while, and then you can't pump it off. Wax has got to be pumped off, and if the stuff starts to coagulate, it won't go through the pump. A lot of these trailers are insulated, and they can be heated actually through coolant lines to keep the product a liquid rather than have it turning into a solid. There are also food grade tankers, which are, again, straight bore tankers like a chemical tanker. Only, of course, you don't mix chemical loads with food loads. And there are tankers dedicated specifically for food grade products. Anything from animal fat to wine to milk. So they're, of course, non-haz material, non-hazmat. It pays a little less, but very nice to haul, especially if the trailer's full up, and helps eliminate some of the slosh that you get. An awful lot of tanker work is hazmat work. So if you're going to do the hazmat end of it, and you should have this anyway, just in case you decide to go and do it, you should have a hazmat endorsement, a fast card, and a TWIC card. And the TWIC card is like a fast card that gets you into ports where a lot of the chemical work is. Well, the upside to hauling tankers and doing tanker work is the pay. The downside is the liability. With crap running downhill, they always point the finger at the driver at the end of the day if something goes wrong. So you've got to really cover your bases when you're hauling this stuff. Dash cams are important to prove you didn't create an accident on the interstate. You've got to do things correctly. You've got to triple check everything before you do it, because one wrong tap open or one wrong move can create an environmental disaster, worst case scenario. And of course, no one's going to want to pay for it. They're going to blame the driver every time. So you really need to cover your bases these days. It's the sad truth of it, but that's the way it is. If you want to do tanker work, you've got to go in with your eyes completely open. Frankly, I enjoyed it. It was really nice. Rather than sitting in a dock for 5 hours waiting to offload. Tanker work, generally, they take you as soon as you get there, no matter what's in the tank. There's not much waiting time, and that's really nice. You're not much sitting around at the customer waiting for them to pay attention to you. You've just got to be careful when you go about it. Think everything through, triple check everything. Tanker work often requires modifications to the equipment. Generally, if you're an owner-operator, they'll put a liquid pump on your truck, or they'll put a blower on your truck. Something I had to do with my truck was, because I was hauling chemicals, I had to raise the height of the fifth wheel. So I had to purchase a new set of legs for the fifth wheel plate to make the front of the trailer sit up higher to make the weight run to the back, because my trailer unloaded through the back end. So you always wanted it up on an angle so the thing would offload. You couldn't unload the thing if you were facing downhill, because half the product would stay in the trailer. So I ended up having to pay, I think I paid $1,000 to haul and for a new set of legs for my fifth wheel. Something else you don't want to do, for you guys that are handy, don't try to weld your own set of legs, high legs, for these fifth wheels. There are all sorts of instances in chemical work where the welds let go in a corner or in a twist or in a bank, and the whole tanker comes off and rolls into the ditch because the fifth wheel didn't hold. You don't want to be in that situation. So spend the money, get a proper fifth wheel and a proper set of legs from the manufacturer. Don't try to build these things yourself. The tanker work that I did paid by the mile when you were moving. It paid by the hour when you were loading or unloading, or if you did have to wait. It paid layover if they wanted you to sit when you were empty and wait for a load that wouldn't be available for a few days. They paid extra if I was going into a bad area like New Jersey or New York. Eastern Seaboard work paid a little better because nobody wanted to go, and they had to pay guys a little better. There was a safety bonus at the end of every quarter, but generally they would try to cheat you out of enough money on your mileage to cover the safety bonus. That's how they did that. They'd be taking away with one hand and giving it to you with the other. So really they were just giving you your own money. It was kind of a scam. You had to watch your pay statements, as I said. But if you took them to task and held their feet to the fire, you ended up making better money every pay because they paid for everything. Now, because this is tanker work and because the companies want to cover their butts as well, when I was doing tanker work, these guys were running ELDs. So there was no denying how long you sat at a customer because the ELD recorded how long you sat at the customer. So they couldn't fight you there on that because it had been recorded already. They also wouldn't try to force dispatch you if you were tired because it was recorded on the ELD. If they wanted to send you an order, it came through the ELD, and they were very cautious as to what they said on that thing and what they wouldn't say on that thing. And if it was unclear, you just type them back a message saying, I'm out of hours in 45 minutes. I can't make it to this next destination or whatever you want me to do. Or I've been here waiting for my washout for 5 hours, just so you know that I'm going to need to be paid for this 5 hours at the washout. So in that case, the ELDs were a real friend to have because they just couldn't force you to do anything. They couldn't bluff you. They couldn't scam you on the pay because everything was recorded. And that's one of the reasons I liked the ELDs when I was doing tanker work. Because I was an owner-operator, I had to pay for everything. I had a product pump on my truck. I had to pay for that. If you put a compressor on to blow product off, you had to pay for that as well. So it wasn't unusual between the two to get into about 10 grand worth of expenses for the equipment that you needed. Now, what I ended up doing was putting my foot down and saying, well, I'll buy one, but I'm not buying the other. I bought the product pump and not the compressor, and they were willing to hire me on that basis. Frankly, if I had it to do over again, I'd probably get the compressor because I found the product pump broke all the time because the stuff would coagulate in the product pump, and if you didn't get it washed out almost immediately, and the washouts were sometimes hours away from the customer, if you didn't get the product pump washed out immediately, it would start to seize up and lock. And I ended up taking that thing apart a couple times just to clean it out because it wouldn't turn. And finally I gave up and decided that having the product pump wasn't worth the money that I'd spent on it. Had I to do it over again, I'd get the compressor and blow the loads off. At the end of the day though, overall, doing tanker work, I made some pretty serious money, and because of the ELD, I didn't run like an idiot. I slept every night, and that's the way the carrier wanted it as well because they didn't want me upside down in the tulips somewhere. Tanker work is a specialized niche, and it is a better paying niche than freight hauling. Try it. You may find you'll like it. And I'll see you on the backhaul.
Hello everybody in Facebook world. I'm Matt Brower. I'm a Schneider trainer, and I'm here with you guys at the training center in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm going to show you an overview of some of the bulk equipment and some of the requirements the job may entail. While we wait for some viewers to pop on, we're going to show you guys inside the brand new 2019 Cascadia P4. So go ahead and have a great look. Hope you guys enjoyed the view of inside the brand new 2019 Cascadia P4 Schneider bulk truck. Now I will take you guys for a walk around the bulk truck and trailer. Before I do, I need to toss on the rest of my PPE. As a bulk driver, we are required to have a hard hat with face shield whenever we're working around the equipment. We're also required to have long sleeves, long pants, and Schneider approved footwear, along with a safety vest and safety glasses. A couple of differences you may notice between the bulk truck and a standard van truck is the fact that we have a pump, hose rack and hose trays, and saddle boxes. Inside the saddle box is where we keep all of our delivery equipment, buckets, fittings, seals, spill pads, all the equipment that may be required for delivering product. The pump and our air compressor are utilized to deliver the liquid product that we're hauling in the tanks. They're all controlled by the truck. We deliver them through our product hoses that we keep secured on the truck until we need them for delivery. In a little bit, you guys will see me take one of the hoses off and then put it back onto the truck so you have an understanding of what that may entail. Go ahead and follow me on down the side of the trailer here. Another bulk specific requirement is during pre-trips and post-trips, and anytime you're doing an offload, it's required that you go up on top of the trailer to check your washout caps and any openings on the trailer to make sure they're secure and properly set up for delivery. So I'm about to go up on top of the trailer and make sure everything is secure and good, and also show you guys what is required while you're up on top of the trailer. One of the requirements that Schneider makes our drivers do is always have 3 points of contact when ascending or descending the ladder. If you guys want to follow me down here, I have laid out a assortment of some of the equipment you may find in a bulk truck. Everything from an air hose utilized in conjunction with the truck's air compressor to pressurize trailers for delivery, buckets and spill pads used at every hose connection for delivery, standard fitting kit for all the trucks, extra caps and plugs for all the hoses, washout caps for on top of the trailers, some special fittings, along with every new driver receives a flashlight, rubber mallet, and wire cutters with their first truck. In addition to those tools, we advise basic tools as well as a heavy hammer for whenever it may be needed. Back here, we have our external valve. This is where the product will leave the trailer during an offload. I'm going to show you guys how to properly remove this cap, place the intermodal fitting on there, and prepare for hooking up a hose for the delivery. This is where a rubber mallet may come in handy. At this point, we're ready to hook up our hose and run the hose wherever it may be needed for the delivery. Over here, I have laid out the appropriate PPE that may be required for different types of loads. For flammable loads, it would be required to wear the Nomex coveralls. These are flame-resistant clothing coveralls. For a corrosive hazmat load, you'd be required to wear the corrosive suit. This is the jacket. The bibs. The rubber steel-toed boots. And the goggles. That's required for a corrosive hazmat load. What may also be required is the respirator. We require all of our company drivers to be clean shaven daily, and this is the reason why. We want to make sure there's a secure fit around the respirator in case the respirator were ever to be needed. The need may not be on the load that the driver is on, but may be required at the facility they're going to. So, as a default, we always have our drivers shaved to make sure they can toss on the respirator. Now I promised to show you guys how to take a hose on and off the truck. That's what I'm about to do. That was taking the hose off the truck. Quickest and easiest way to do so. Now, I will then replace the hose on the truck. That is the quickest and easiest way to replace those to the truck. The last bit that I can show you on this truck and trailer unit is another new feature that the P4 Cascadia offers the Schneider driver. They are now coming with a built-in power inverter. So, hope you guys enjoyed the overview of the Schneider bulk truck and trailer unit. We are currently hiring for local, regional, and over-the-road positions. We hire inexperienced and experienced drivers. So if you have no experience and you're thinking about going to CDL school, or if you have 10 years of experience out on the road or anything in between, feel free to reach out to our recruiting team. You can call us at 800-44-PRIDE, or you can visit schneiderjobs.com. Again, I hope you guys had a great time watching the overview. My name's Matt Brower. If you're ever at the Gary Schneider Operating Center, feel free to stop in and say hi.
The importance of vehicle inspections cannot be overstated. By inspecting your vehicle before a trip, while you're en route, at each stop, and after every trip, and completing a driver vehicle inspection report, or DVIR, you'll be able to identify safety defects and deficiencies that need attention before they cause a hazard. If you find something questionable during your inspection, have it checked out by a mechanic before you hit the road. It's entirely your responsibility. The regs state that you, the driver, must be certain your vehicle, its parts and accessories, are in safe operating condition. Those are exactly the things Leroy's looking for in this pre-trip.
Some examples of problems that require immediate attention include fuel and cargo leaks, wheels with missing lug nuts, improperly inflated or badly worn.
Let's review the 7 steps that make up a good, thorough pre-trip inspection, no matter what order they're performed in or what type of unit you drive.
1. Vehicle overview. 2. Engine compartment. 3. Inside the cab. 4. Lights. 5. Walk-around inspection. 6. Check signal lights. And 7. Final brake check. The inside of the cab, which includes instruments and controls.
Before you get in the cab, check that the grab handle, door handle, and steps are free of grease or oil, and in the winter, ice. Be certain all your emergency equipment is in its proper place and that the fire extinguisher is fully charged and easy to access. It's also important to keep the cab clean and free of trash. Something as simple as an empty beverage bottle underfoot could be disastrous.
Test the air pressure and condition of the back tires. Look between the dualies for any debris that may be stuck between them. The tires should be the same type and same size and should never touch. Take a close look at the brake chambers, and again look for cracks or other signs of wear on the brake drums. Examine the rear suspension, springs, hangers, U-bolts, shackles, bushings, rod arms, and shock absorbers.
Going to make your day go a lot better if you know there's no unforeseen breakdowns, and also it's going to make sure you get back home safely to see your family again at night.
The driver's position within the company is the most crucial of any of the positions in the company. The driver is the backbone of the safety program. Without the cooperation of the driver, safety just doesn't exist.
By conducting your pre-trip, en route, and post-trip inspections properly and thoroughly, and filling out the DVIR accurately and completely, you are doing your part to assist your company in maintaining safe tractors and tank trailers. And you're better able to deliver your cargo on time and safely.
Perhaps the most challenging commercial vehicle combination a professional driver will operate is the tractor and tank trailer, because the tanker is used to transport cargo that tends to move and continue moving while in transit. Cargo transported by vans and flatbeds is required to be secured so the load cannot shift. This is impossible with tanker cargo. By its very nature, cargo transported by tank will virtually always be in motion, and that motion will affect the handling of your entire combination. The more your cargo moves, the more it affects your vehicle's handling. Your job is to handle your vehicle in such a way that your cargo's movement is kept to an absolute minimum. Some tankers carry dry bulk commodities such as feed, flour, sugar, cement, or plastic pellets. But tankers are also the ideal container for a variety of liquid and other products, including petroleum goods, liquefied gases, asphalt, chemicals, food products, waste materials, water, even wine. As you know, there are a wide variety of tankers on the road, differing in shape, construction, and purpose. Typically, tankers are either elliptical, cylindrical, or double conical. The advantage of an elliptical or oval tank is that it has a lower center of gravity, which contributes to less load movement, therefore offering better handling. On the other hand, the cylindrical or circular tank is stronger and quite versatile. The double conical tank has a center drop for unloading from the bottom. A tanker either has one large compartment or is compartmentalized. If it has one compartment, it will either be entirely open, which is also called a clean bore unit, or it will contain baffles, which help cut down on the motion of fluid within the tank, making the vehicle easier to control. A compartmentalized tanker, as the name implies, is divided into multiple compartments, so different commodities can be carried within the same tanker. Although they do have a lower center of gravity, because of their shape, partially loaded elliptical tankers have more room for lateral motion of cargo. If they are between 25 and 80% loaded, they are more likely to roll over. Potentially dangerous driving situations can usually be avoided by implementing one very simple plan of action. Slow down and make no sudden moves. By utilizing the training, knowledge, and experience you have as a professional driver and incorporating the special techniques necessary to drive a tanker, you will be able to perform your job with confidence and skill. And most importantly, you'll be able to perform your job safely.
You gotta treat that product with respect to get it there safely.
It's better to be in the defensive mode than it is to try to play catch up. You never win.
Keep it slow, keep it safe.